Good morning. How are you all doing today? When we came on Monday afternoon, I live in this area, so we just drove in early, and I saw that there was a room like this. I thought, you know what? If I was an attendee, I think I would schedule every single session in this room because those other seats just get so uncomfortable, and this was so nice. So we did the overflow in here. And those of you that like a lot of personal space, there's still some back rows in the balcony where you have 5 or 10 rows in front of the next person. Everybody having a good time in Atlanta so far? Did you enjoy our little bit of excitement yesterday? My name's Barbara Davis, and those of you that know me know that I like to do presentations walking around all over the place, but I figure since you get to sit in a comfortable chair, I'm gonna sit in a comfortable chair today. And hopefully I can be as excited sitting down about reconciliation as I am standing up, and you can take that any way you want to. While we're waiting for just another minute or two before we start, I usually like to make my presentations very conversational, which means I like to have a lot of questions while I'm presenting. But since this room is so large, I doubt that we will be able to do that this time. So you're going to probably need to save your questions until the end. And then I haven't a clue if there's any microphones in the balcony. I would doubt it. So if you have a question and you're in the balcony, you're going to need to email me or come on down and join the party. Or there's 2 mics right over here which you can go to, and we'll make sure that there's time at the end to ask questions if you have any questions. If I'm going too fast, if you all can just raise your hands and wave them and say, slow down, we have to think about what you're saying for a minute, then that'll also work really well. And while we're also waiting to start, I need to read an announcement that session 3, administering adds, drops, and withdrawals offered today from 11:40 to 12:55 was moved from room A313 to B405, and we did that so all of you could make sure to get your steps in today. No, we moved it to a bigger room. So it moved from A313 to B405, and that was session 3, administering adds, drops, and withdrawals. And session 29, R2T4 and credit hour programs also offered at 11:40 to 12:55 was moved from B405 to room A313. So they just switched places. Anybody need me to read that one more time? Did I hear a yes? Yes, all right. So session 29, R2T4 and credit hour programs, which is also offered 11:40 to 12:55, was moved from room B405 to room A313. And if you downloaded the app, the FSA Conference app on your phone, there's also in the, what do we call it, notifications or whatever, which also told me yesterday that I could continue my presentation that got evacuated. The activity feed. There's an announcement about these room changes as well. Okay, let's get started. My name's Barbara Davis. I work for the Department of Education and have for the last 17 years, actually. Before that, I worked at a school in Southern California, a small school, and I was the financial aid director there for a number of years before coming to the department. And in the department, have had a number of roles, from creating training for EdExpress to being a liaison to the COD Customer Service Center in Niagara Falls, to the last 4 or 5 years, I think, working with our funds control division, where I work with funding up front and reconciliation both in the back. And with me today, I have a couple of colleagues in the front from our COD reconciliation team who will also be available to answer questions at the end if you have any questions. So you can either, while we're all still here, go to a mic, or we'll have just a few minutes where we can entertain questions up front if you need to ask it privately, or we can go outside after the session is over. Alrighty, so let's get started with Title IV reconciliation tools and tips. Our agenda for today, we're going to cover the rules and regulations, just a reminder in case any of you might have forgotten what they might be. Then we're going to move along to reconciliation roundup, and we're going to talk about the different types of reconciliation that you need to be doing on a regular basis. And then we'll cap it off at the very end, talking about closeout, which needs to happen for every program every year to make sure that you've completed everything you need to do for reconciliation for that year. Okay, so first of all, reconciliation, the definition is to make sure that you're in agreement, right? So if you're reconciled with your family after Thanksgiving dinner and conversations you may or may not have had, then you could have at least agreed to disagree, right? So you're reconciled because you at least had some form of agreement. But when it comes to financial aid, what we mean by that is the process by which your Title IV aid, grants, loans, and campus-based aid, which is recorded on the department systems, is reviewed and compared with what you did internally. So you're going to identify discrepancies and resolve them, and then you're going to also identify the reasons which might remain why you're not in balance. The key here is that you're going to make sure that the department's systems agree with yours. Lots of times I'll talk to schools and they'll say, we're reconciling to COD or we're reconciling to the FSA. COD and the FSA only have the data that you fed it. So we need to agree with you, okay? You're gonna make sure you're reconciled to the Business and Financial Aid Office. Why do you have to do that? Well, because it's required. So monthly reconciliation is required for every program except Pell, and I've listed the regulatory requirements there, which you have. You can download the presentation and then you'll have those sites if you need to take it back to your office to prove to anybody why you need to reconcile monthly. But we do recommend, even though Pell is not required, that to meet other regulatory requirements that you are reconciling monthly, because it demonstrates administrative capability, for one thing, and because you need to do that in order to meet the 15-day disbursement regulation. FSA Handbook Volume 4, Chapters 5 and 6 talk extensively about cash management and reconciliation. Just as a reminder, the Blue Book was discontinued, I think, a couple of years ago. And so the FSA Handbook is your guide both for the business office and the financial aid office. Specifically for this topic, it would be Volume 4, Chapters 5 and 6. Everybody in the balcony, can you hear me okay up there? All right. I see somebody with a white shirt on up there, and I can actually see you, so if you can't hear me, you can wave your hand or something. That's so cool. Okay, disbursement definition. Some people are a little unclear what it means to disperse aid, and it means the date that you post to the student's account or you make funds available. It doesn't necessarily need to be with the department's funds. It can be with your funds, and then you reimburse yourself with the department's funds. So it's the date that your institution makes the funds available post to the student's account or the Title IV aid. And it can be funds received, again, from the secretary through G5, or institutional funds that you're using in advance of receiving Title IV funds. You must report disbursements to us within 15 days of either making that disbursement or knowing that you need to adjust that disbursement. So this does not supersede or in any way affect reconciliation, or excuse me, return to Title IV funds requirements. You still need to meet those guidelines, but when you know you need to make a return of Title IV and then you calculate the amount that you need to return, that is the date from which you must meet the 15 days reporting of an adjustment. Does that make sense? That'll be yes or no? Thank you. Good morning. Did you get me up there in the balcony? Can I hear a resounding yes? Awesome, thank you. I'm going to make this a little interactive, even though we're all in comfy chairs. Okay. We also publish that information in the Federal Register annually, and this year it was posted in April, and I listed the date there, so if you need to look it up and see the reporting requirement specifically for yourself, you've got the information to do so. Okay. You draw funds and return funds through G5, and I gave you the URL there, www.g5.gov. Getting access to that system is just a little bit different from the way we access our other systems. Generally, NSLDS, COD, you're going to go through CPS, SAIG, or what we call participation management, and you have a destination point administrator who signs up other people at your school. G5 does not work that way. Every person that is going to get access to G5 needs to individually go in and sign up and complete their enrollment process, and then the president of your institution signs the form and sends it in. So it's only the president that's deciding whether or not you have access. So sometimes folks will come to me for the financial aid office and say, my business office won't let me have access to G5. Well, that's not the case. You can get access. I recommend financial aid administrators have read-only access to G5, and that business or bursars offices have read-only access to COD. The other thing is you have to have a bank account established for the deposit of your funds, but you also need to have a bank account set up for refunds. It can be the same bank account that you're using to deposit funds to. It's up to you if you want to have a separate refund bank account or if you want to have the same bank account that funds are deposited to. I just want to alert you that the department is very quick in removing funds from your refund bank account. So you want to make sure if you use separate accounts that you put the money in that bank account for us to draw from before you probably create that refund, because it will pretty much do it the same day. Another reminder here, if you look down at the bottom, there is a reminder that you must register your DUNS number with SAM annually. Okay? If you change any information about your DUNS that's related to your DUNS, you need to make sure it's updated in SAM, but you also need to register your DUNS number annually. G5 is used for a lot of department funding, and this is a requirement that they have. Right now, they're not imposing any penalties on schools that are not registering, but they tell us that they will be, which means if you don't register annually, you will not get any money. So you want to make sure that you are following their guidance, which they post on their homepage, and that you are registering your DUNS number annually. Okay, G5 award numbers are the award numbers that are assigned to each of the funding types, and their award year, school, and program specific. You can see I put an example down there for direct loans. The award number is P268K, and then it's followed by the trailing year. So for 16-17, that would be 17. And then those little pound signs that I've got there, or hashtags, would be represent your school's 4-digit GAPS or G5 ID. So you can see it's program, P268K, award year, 17, and school, the 4-digit GAPS or G5 number specific. We've also listed the others there. Teach is also a trailing year, but Pell Grant, IASG, and campus-based are all leading year. So for 16-17, the digit is 16, okay? So you're gonna draw funds and return funds specifically to the award, either Pell or direct loan, and to the award year. And if you make a mistake, you're going to need to fix it because they're not interchangeable. That's just a reminder. Most of you know that, but we do have schools that tend to think otherwise. None of you, though. Okay, cash management regulations about when to draw and return. Another reminder here, a lot of schools think that Title IV aid is their fund, it's their money. That is not true. You are a trustee for the student. That is not your money. It's being used to pay charges that your institution is charging that student, and the student is using this money, but you are a trustee of those Title IV funds, and you need to consider it that way, because you cannot use those funds for anything else. And I want to make sure that you understand that, so that if you have not if you draw down $1 million and you report $750,000, you can't just keep that other $250,000 while you're deciding what to do with it. You've got to return that money, because that is not your money. It is student money, okay? You can only draw for immediate need, so that means you can only have the funds in your bank account for a maximum of 3 days from when it actually hits your bank account until you get the funds to the student by posting to their account. There is an exception though, and that's called excess or idle cash, which you can keep the funds for up to an additional 7 days, as long as you meet the specific requirements, which are in Volume 4 of the FSA Handbook, page 17. Any funds that you do not disperse before that 3-day deadline are considered excess cash, and you must return them. If you're not able to use all the funds, or if you're not able to substantiate all the funds, in other words, the disbursement's rejected and you're having a hard time fixing them, you can't just keep the funds you drew down for a month or two while you're figuring out how to fix those rejects. You need to return those funds. Got it? That'll be a yes? Yeah? How about you up in the back, in the balcony in the white shirt? Yeah? Oh, we got more white shirts up there now. Cool. All right. Well, yesterday when we evacuated, there were so many people. I was up in Building B in another ginormous room, and which I thought we were perfectly safe in, because it was, no windows, everything. Anyway, we had to evacuate, and everybody's going down the escalator, and I thought I will take the stairs, even though my knee pretty much is bone on bone. And because I thought it was only going to be one flight. No, like 5 flights of stairs. So those of you in the balcony, I think you must like stairs. Getting a little exercise? Okay. Returning funds. You must return your funds to G5 electronically. You can still send a check for Pell, but direct loans, we require that you return funds electronically. You need to set up a bank account, as I mentioned, to use for refunds. If you have trouble with that, you can call G5, and I listed their phone number there for you. If you do a return of Title IV funds, you not only need to return the funds through G5, but you need to make that corresponding downward adjustment for Pell or direct loans or teach anything but campus-based in G5. So it's a 2-step process. You make the downward adjustment, and you also return the funds. For grant programs, funds cannot be adjusted. The disbursements can't be adjusted if it's more than 5 years. But you will always take money back. It just doesn't necessarily go back to the Pell account. It can go back to a miscellaneous account. The department will always accept a return of funds, even if it's after the 5-year deadline when the year has been closed. If you're returning funds from an audit or program review, please make sure that you're following the repayment instructions per the audit or program review determination letter, because sometimes they're a little bit different. Why do you have to return funds? Well, you might have drawn more than you need to draw. I know a lot of schools that I've talked to at this conference and other conferences, they may draw down a couple of disbursements less than they think they need so that they don't have to return funds, which is fine. It's an acceptable practice. But if you can't disperse everything that you drew, you do need to return those funds. You might have mistakenly drawn funds from either the wrong award year or from the wrong program, and in that case, you need to return those funds and correct your mistake. As I mentioned, the R2T4 calculations, you might require a return of funds or owing from a program review or audit. And maybe the student doesn't want their money anymore. Maybe they bought a lottery ticket, won the lottery, and said, hey, I don't want these student loans. And they come in and they say, please return the funds. If the student does that within 120 days of a direct loan disbursement, then you, the school, can make a downward adjustment and return the funds to your direct loan account on the student's behalf, and we will not charge fees on that loan. If a student comes to you after 120 days of that disbursement date, the student needs to make a payment to the servicer because they are responsible for the fees that were charged. They had that money for 4 months and they need to pay the fees associated with it. So within 120 days, you can return the funds for the student, make the downward adjustment, use the money, put it back in your direct loan account, or else if you have somebody else that you can use the funds for, go ahead and pay them instead. If not, outside 120 days, it's the student's responsibility to return those funds. Another reason you may need to return funds is you might have paid for Pell with a verification W, and if you have not verified, then we're going to ask you to return those funds halfway through the year. So make sure that you are verifying. Or you might have had a POP with another school, and we might have taken done a automatic downward adjustment for you, which puts you in a situation where you have to return the Pell funds. So you also want to avoid those POP situation. You also may need to return funds because of unclaimed funds. Your student has not received or accepted their credit balance check, and so you'll need to return those funds. There is a time frame for that, and I know program reviewers are finding a lot of schools that the business or bursar's office has kept unclaimed funds, unclaimed credit balances to students for several years. We want to remind you that you do not do that, and that you need to return those funds no later than, it can be earlier, but no later than 240 days from the disbursement date. And a reminder there from the handbook, volume 4, pages 20 and 71, that if you kind of check the middle part there, that it says before the end of the award year or right as the student is withdrawing, if you have any unclaimed credit balance checks, you want to connect with that student to make sure that they know they've got them and they want to take care of them. So we are expecting you by the end of your academic year to have resolved any unclaimed credit balance checks. If the student comes back, you sent them back, and a week later they want the funds, you know you can always put the disbursement back in, and you can, if it was direct loaning, you close the year, you can open the year back up, and you can report the disbursement and draw those funds for the student again. But don't let those credit balance checks or those stale dated checks go for more than the 240 days. In other words, not years and years and years. I had a school call that they had some unclaimed checks from 2005. And I was very glad to help them, very glad they found them, and they were very honest about it. And it was a new person in her position, and so thought that was really cool, but oh my goodness. Okay, campus-based funds, a little bit different. When you return campus, if you find you need to return campus-based funds and it's after the award year, you also need to go in and adjust your FSA. And you can contact this campus-based help desk, and they'll be glad to help you open the year back up. You can currently go back for 5 years, back to 11-12, if you need to make an adjustment to a FSA that you've already filed. But then you'd still go ahead and return those funds to G5. So campus-based is not in COD. Campus-based is basically you're reporting through your FSA, so that's where you need to make your adjustment. Okay, how do you get funds? Well, for Pell and campus-based and Iraq, Afghanistan service grant funds, every award year you establish a current funding level or authorization by submitting actual disbursements for Pell and Teach. For campus-based, we give you an authorization based on the FSA. So you all just finished meeting the deadline of October 1st for your campus base, where you reported what you paid for 15-16, and we'll be using that information to establish awards for you for 17-18, right? Thank you. You're getting it now, all right. So based on that, we will notify you of tentative allocations that are going to be published in January. You want to make sure you're looking at them carefully, because if you don't think it's right, you can appeal before we publish our final notice of allocations, about how much money you're going to get for campus-based in April. A lot of schools will contact us after that April date and say, hey, this isn't what I thought we were supposed to receive. We don't always have the money to make that adjustment. Campus-based is a little bit tight that way. So you really want to make sure that you're checking your tentatives to make sure that you got what you thought you were supposed to get, because we give you all of the money up front for the award year for campus-based. Does that mean you draw all the money up front? No. Immediate need, right? You're only drawing from your work study or your SEOG as you need the funds, even though we put it all out there in G5 at the beginning of the year. Okay? Pell and Teach, as I mentioned, is initiated by the reporting of disbursements. So as soon as you report disbursements and they're accepted in COD, then we'll increase your funding, and the funds are available for you to draw. IASG is still a funding by case manual increase based on anticipated, not actual, but anticipated disbursements. I want to make sure that you all understand the difference between authorization or current funding level and available balance or available funds. The CFL or authorization is the total amount of aid that was made available to you for that award year for that program. The available funds is what's left after the any draws that you have made. So the CFL represents all the money for the year. The available funds is what's left minus what you've already drawn. What we gave you minus draws, available funds, okay? Here's an example of Pell, and you'll notice that the initial CFL was pretty hefty, almost $30 million. That means that school, when they sent in their disbursements for the first time for the year, they sent in almost $30 million in disbursements, and that's their initial current funding level. Currently, they have about almost $34 million, and you can see the previous CFL and the change amount. So there was a positive adjustment, so they probably reported a disbursement or two, which caused their current funding level to increase. You can find this information on the funding information screen, which we're going to look at a couple more times during this presentation. For Pell specifically, you'll notice the available balance is a positive, and right below that, the cash greater than net accepted and posted disbursements is a negative. That's because they reported disbursements, the cash is available, but this, when I made this screenshot, the school had not yet drawn that cash. So the cash is less than the negative, less than disbursements. And it's real easy just to do the math. If you look down at the bottom two lines and you see the net accepted and posted disbursements is $33,923,076.32, and the drawdowns is $33,751,565 and no cents. How many of you report cents for Pell? That's what I was thinking. I grabbed the one school that reports cents for Pell. Here, I wouldn't do pennies personally, but that's your choice. You can. Also a reminder, your Pell Grant administrative cost allowance is paid 3 times a year, so or a cycle year. So for 16-17, you'll be getting your first ACA payment March 2017. The next one will come August 2017, and then the final one a year later. We made a change last year where your ACA is no longer pushed to your bank account, but you have to go to G5 to draw the funds. We have a lot of schools that are not going out there to draw their funds. Okay, reminder, you need to go draw the funds yourself. And you'll see that under award P063Q, and then the year and the 4-digit G5 number. Okay, direct loan funding, how is it established? 3 different ways. We have schools that are advance funded, which means we give you funding up front, not like campus space. We don't give you all the money at the beginning of the year, but we give you usually about what we think you will need for the first half of the year, and that usually happens around June, unless you're a school that has your funding year start earlier, like grad schools. A lot of grad schools have law or med programs that start in April or May, so they need their funding earlier, so we'll give a small portion in March, and then the other half is in June, and then we just did our second authorization increase in November. We usually are watching schools pretty closely, and we'll make another adjustment if you need it in February. And then if you need more throughout the year, you can always contact COD customer service, and we'll be happy to give you an advance as long as you're reconciled. If you are not reconciled, we will not give you an advance. So if you owe us $1 million, don't ask for 2, because you won't get any, okay? Foreign schools, or those schools that are on heightened cash monitoring 1, are what we call records first. It works just like Pell. So you submit your actual disbursements, and you can submit them to COD up to 7 days in advance. So you don't have to use your own money. You can still draw funds from G5 and use the department's money. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a disbursement coming up December 8th. You report to COD those actual disbursements of December 8th on December 1st, 7 days in advance. Goes through the process where COD communicates with G5. We make those funds available. They're usually there the 2nd or the 3rd. You draw those funds so that they hit your bank account no earlier than the 5th. And then you've got those 3 days, and you want to make sure that you draw and post on the 8th, which is when you told us you were going to post. If you take the funds out on the 5th and post on the 6th, you're going to need to go and change all those disbursement dates to the 6th. But you can report in advance. So just make sure that, wanted to make sure, a reminder that you guys knew that. The only difference for heightened cash monitoring 1 and heightened cash monitoring 2 from a funding perspective is those schools that are on HCM2 do not draw their own funds, but the payment analyst, after reviewing the records they submitted, makes that draw on the school's behalf. Also, I think it's this slide, yep, I said, do you all know that if you wanted to, you can choose to be a records first school? So you don't have to be on heightened cash monitoring at all, but you can contact COD customer service, and you can say, you know what, can you just flag me as a records first school? And we have a special spot in COD that will do that, and then we won't give you that initial authorization. A lot of schools process as though they are records first and reimburse themselves anyway. It's a great way to help you make sure that you're staying reconciled, because you report the disbursements, and then the business office only draws what was accepted. So it's not like you draw, $2 million and you only had accepted $1.5 million, and so you're unsubstantiated $500,000. You only would be drawing the $1.5 million that was accepted. Of course, there's a little extra pressure to make sure you get those $500,000 in rejects fixed so you can get that money, but it does help you stay reconciled. Any questions on that? You all understand? In the balcony, can I get a resounding yes? All right, thank you. You guys are off the hook. Okay, drawing funds. So again, just a reminder, your authorization versus the available funds, and here's a direct loan advance funding example. So see, this school got an initial CFL of $88 million. It was not increased. I made this screenshot fairly early. And so you can see we gave them funding on what day? What day did we give them their initial authorization? Can you see? When? June 17th, thank you. How much do they have available? 17 million. Should they draw that whole $17 million down? No. Based on what they have as accepted disbursements, how much should they draw down? $4.5 million. You see that negative cash greater than net accepted and posted disbursements? That means they have disbursements that were accepted that are $4.5 million more than what they've drawn. So they need to draw $4.5 million. Now, let's say they need to draw that 4.5 million, but they've got another, they know they have an immediate need within the next couple of days for that other 10 million, then go ahead and draw $14 million. But you only draw what you need for immediate need, not your whole available balance. Okay, another reminder, record retention. When you are keeping records, I just want to remind you that you not only have to keep your disbursement records, but you also need to keep other records that would apply for determining how you, determined how that student was awarded aid, how much they were eligible to receive, as well as the payment period, the date, and what those funds were applied for. Work with schools sometimes where we're having to go and reconcile and they're having to go through boxes to find their records, which I imagine none of you can imagine that happening, but it does happen. Sometimes with smaller schools, you want to make those records readily available. We'll pretend no one else outside this room can hear me, but my practice when I worked in a financial aid office was, you're going to have an annual audit, and I want there to be a revolving door so that auditor is in and out as soon as possible. So you want to make those records in as easy and a readable format as you possibly can, and so that when you do have an audit or an auditor, they have everything they need to know that you have the documentation for how you paid those students. Don't tell my secret. Okay, let's move on to reconciliation. So you've got internal reconciliation and external reconciliation. Internal reconciliation is what you, the financial aid administrator, and you, the business office, are doing on a regular basis. Could be weekly, could be daily, it could be every couple of weeks. I wouldn't recommend going any longer than a couple of weeks or monthly. You've got to reconcile monthly, but remember that disbursement reporting, disbursement adjustment of every 15 days. If you're only reconciling monthly, you might not have met that other reporting requirement of knowing that you had a disbursement adjustment that you needed to report. So you really want to be touching base frequently. So we got internal reconciliation and then external. And external is when you make sure that your internal agreed upon date and amount is the same as what's reflected in the department's systems. Key players for internal reconciliation, of course, is the financial aid office and the business office and or bursar's office, whatever you call it at your institution, as well as the student, because you want to make sure that all of you agree that the student is getting exactly what they wanted and or what they needed to pay tuition fees, books, and supplies. What needs to agree? The cash. You need to make sure that the cash drawn is matching the disbursements, that your net draws, and that would be cash minus refunds, net draws, equals your net disbursements, and that would be disbursements minus adjustments. That's your net disbursements by program and award year. You want to make sure that what is posted to student accounts, the amount and the date, I'm going to underline date because we've always also had a lot of program review findings where schools did not report the correct date that they posted to the student account, matches exactly with what is in the school's financial aid software. Your net draws, or ND, is equal to your net accepted and posted disbursements, or NAPD. That you are not holding cash beyond the cash management regulations. So in other words, you're not hanging on to that cash while you reconcile, that you're making sure you're returning it timely, that you're checking your bank account and that your internal cash transactions are regularly compared to your bank statements, and that if you have a system where you're transmitting records between the financial aid office and the business office, that you're actually comparing in that system on a regular basis to make sure they actually do match. A lot of schools assume that just because the financial aid office gets ready a disbursement batch or roster, and at the same time that they send records to COD, they're also sending that to the business office, that it's going to match. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with schools and it did not match. So you really want to have a regular comparison to make sure that that data is matching, and don't assume that your software is automatically making that work and making that happen. You need to check it. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that your financial aid office, I would highly recommend that you have read-only access to G5, and the business office has read-only access to COD. Some tips for the bursar's office: you want to make sure that you are actually meeting together regularly with the financial aid office. Go out to lunch, have a chat about records, enjoy each other's company, and that you are, I got a laugh out of that, and that you are, communicating about your different office records. Bursars, you really want to make sure that your bank statements are compared and matching what's in G5 per award. Returning funds appropriately. If you make a mistake, you can adjust funds, but only if you make a mistake. You may not adjust funds in G5 to reconcile. You may not do that. We took that functionality away for the campus-based programs a couple of years ago because schools were using that adjustment process to reconcile. We are holding fast that we're not going to do that for Pell and direct loans, but if we continue to see a number of schools abusing that and adjusting between awards to reconcile, then we're going to have to remove that functionality from there as well. So in that case, if you drew down $25 million and you drew it from the wrong year, we wouldn't let you adjust it. You would have to return $25 million and then draw it from the right year. So please do not abuse that adjustment functionality that is still available, and only use it if you make a mistake. If you drew $25 million from direct loan 15-16 and you meant to draw it from 16-17, catch it quick and adjust it. I don't want to see an adjustment that was done 9 months later. Got it? All right, cool. Okay, G5, tools and reports. If you go into G5, the external award activity report is your report that you would most likely use. This is really tiny, so hopefully you either printed it out or have iPads or something that you can see that's close to you. But you'll notice on the left, or this side anyway, from what I can see, that side for you guys, you'll see the award numbers, which I kind of cut off so that I didn't show that particular school's G5 number there. They've added the recipient reference information in that column. You can see the beginning authorization in the next column, then the total draws and any refunds. And this is a really good school. I don't see any adjustments that were made for any of these programs. You've got your net draws, and then again, of course, the last day to draw funds. I want to draw your attention here to this middle row. You see the Pell, that's Pell 15-16. I made this screenshot a few weeks ago. That school still has an available balance of $142, $104, and 58 cents. Should not happen. 15-16 should have been reconciled by September 30th, right? So this school is not reconciled, and basically they're out of compliance. Also want to point out that this school also has an ACA administrative cost allowance for 14-15 of $10 still hanging out there, and 15-16 of $6,060 that they have not drawn down yet. Reminder, draw your ACA down. Okay. We talked about bursar tips, now financial aid office tips for internal reconciliation. Again, that daily check-in, going to lunch with the business or bursar's office, making sure that the disbursements reported to COD or reported in FSA actually match the disbursements that were posted. You're going to, again, run those comparison reports between the business office and the financial aid office, and we already talked about making sure that the data matches even if you have a system data exchange. Oh, I'm going to go back. So I was working with a small school about 6-7 months ago, and we went back and forth for a couple of months actually, and they assured me repeatedly that their financial aid office records matched their business office records, but I could see in COD that they were not reconciled. Their disbursements didn't match their draws. So finally, after a month or so of discussing this, I said, okay. I put a table in an email, and I said, I want you, the financial aid office, to fill in the amount that the total amount that you reported for 14-15 Pell, and I want the business office to say the total amount that you drew and the total amount that you posted to student accounts for 14-15. They completed the table, sent the email back to me. Did the numbers match? No. I'm like, you guys, you told me the numbers matched, but you just filled this out and the numbers didn't match. This is what I'm talking about. This is internal reconciliation. This is not needing me to have you fill out a table. It's you guys talking, and you can see your numbers don't match. You gotta fix this. There's a discrepancy here. You're gonna need to look at your students and your records to identify the discrepancy. Okay. Now that you've done your internal reconciliation, that's when you want to go and do your external reconciliation with the department systems. You want to make sure that both the business office and financial aid office records match exactly to what you reported to COD or what you reported annually on your FSA, and that your cash transactions also match. So once you've got the financial aid office and business office singing from the same hymnal, you're going to reconcile with, like I said, with Campus Base via eCampus Base with the FSA, and all other Title IV aid with COD, and G5 is a resource, but you're not reconciling to G5. You're reconciling to the data that you have reported to COD and your FSA. That is why business offices need read-only access to COD, because you know that we reduce funds. So your business office might see an available balance of 0 and think they're okay, whereas because G5 is not disbursement specific, it's at a gross summary level. But then if you go look in COD, you'll see disbursements and draws don't match. Even if you have a 0 available balance because we reduced your funds, you're not reconciled if your disbursements and draws don't match. You want to keep your records in sync, and we're going to go through each of these. You want to keep your records in sync with COD by making sure you're resolving rejects timely. You're going to use your COD and G5 reports, and we're going to look at a few of those. Also some COD web screens, which we'll look at, and then especially paying attention to IFAP and COD updates. So, edit codes, 2 types, rejects and warnings. A rejected record does not build in COD. It's data that you sent to COD from your system telling us what you did, but for some reason, COD is rejecting it. We do not let it in the door. It does not build. It does not impact funding. A warning, on the other hand, just alerts you of a potential problem. It will build in COD, but usually there's something a little weird about it that doesn't look right, and it may need some action on your part, okay? Warnings build, rejects do not. So you want to set aside time to resolve your edit code rejects, because if you don't, if you're a records first school for direct loans, you're not going to get that increase in funding. If you're, obviously for Pell and Teach, if it's rejected data, it's not going to increase your CFL. If you are an advanced funded direct loan school, you're going to become unsubstantiated if you have rejected data that you've already drawn the funds for and you haven't resolved. Most of the calls we get to customer service are edit code rejects. It is the top call reason every single day, so you want to make sure that you do fix those. You have a tool available to you, so if you get a reject 46 and you're not sure what it is, you can always go to IFAP, ifap.ed.gov, and go to Publications from the home menu and click on COD Technical Reference, which is where I have that little blue asterisk, and then go to Volume 2, Chapter or Section 4, where it's got edits. Did my little arrow go? I didn't make an arrow on this one? Oh, I didn't make an arrow. So here's an example in the technical reference. You see edit reject 24, and you can tell it's a reject because of the R in the edit type. It's an award level reject, and the problem is because the CPS transaction information does not match. So how to fix the record, you can see in the far column, you need to compare the SSN, date of birth, and name, and make sure that what's reported on the ICER transaction matches what you're reporting to COD. Pell reports for reconciliation. The most common one for your cash would be the electronic statement of account. This is generated to you every single time you have a change in the cash amount. You can request this, but it will also be pushed to you, as I said, when you have a change in your authorization. The reconciliation report comes through your SAIG mailbox, and we send that to you at the, I think the first week of September, we send out the recon report for schools, right? And it's a summary level of what you did for the year for that student. So let's say I'm getting a $5,000 Pell Grant. The recon report would say, yeah, you paid Barbara Davis $5,000 for the year, as opposed to the year to date, which has disbursement level data. It would still have Barbara Davis, 2,500 Pell September 1st, 2,500 Pell January 1st. It's broken out at the disbursement level. It's also got a whole lot of other data in it because the year to date can be used to rebuild your database if you have an awful problem and you lose your database, or it can be used to rebuild just one student record. All right, both of those go through your SAIG mailbox. You can request different reports for Pell by going to the batch menu, choosing new report request, and here you can see you can get your ESOA or electronic statement of account, the MRR, multiple reporting record, your recon file, a Pell POP report, the year to date, or a verification status report, and they'll be delivered to your SAIG mailbox. We got some new tools coming up this next March for Pell. We're going to try and make our programs, the reports operate a little more the same. So some of the current reports we have for direct loans, the school account statement and the disbursement detail on demand, we're also going to make available for Pell. So your Pell SAS will start with the 17-18 award year, and we'll send it to you monthly. It's going to come in comma delimited format, which you can import into Excel. And it also, just like the direct loan SAS, will have 3 sections to it: a cash summary level, a cash detail level, and then disbursement detail. You've also got the Pell SAS disbursement detail on demand, which we'll be making available next March. And it differs from the SAS in that it's available whenever you want it. You just have to go and request it, again, from the batch menu. And it will just have disbursement level information, and you set the time frame for it. So you can say, I just want my Pell SAS disbursement detail for this past week from X day to X day. Or I want my disbursement information for the last 2 months. Or I want year-to-date information. Whereas the school account statement is months worth of data or a year's worth of data, and we only give it to you monthly. The disbursement detail on demand is you demand when you want it and have sent to your SAIG mailbox. Alrighty. Okay, direct loan and teach reports for reconciliation. As I mentioned, you've got your school account statement, which you need to reconcile to monthly. That's SAS disbursement detail on demand. Just like we're talking about how you're going to get a Pell, we've been doing the direct SAS disbursement detail on demand for a couple of years now. But I know, talking to schools, that you aren't really sure about that and not using it. I highly recommend you use the SAS disbursement detail on demand. It's a great report. Also, the actual disbursement list, which is available for direct loans only, and you can get that from the services menu right on the COD website. The direct loan SAS, the Teach SAS, is the department's official ending cash balance for your school. So you want to make sure that we reflect what you did, and you have to reconcile to the data that's available on the SAS monthly. Some schools don't use the SAS. They'll use the direct loan disbursement detail on demand, and they'll use the funding screen, which has your cash. But you must prove to an auditor that you reconciled to the data that's reflected on the SAS. Okay? It's composed of 4 sections: the cash summary, cash detail, disbursement summary, and loan level and disbursement level detail. So you get your SAS, which comes through your SAIG mailbox. Some schools never pull it in, so I'm telling you, you need to. You compare cash summary If it matches, you're done. That's all you got to do. If it doesn't match, then you need to take the next step, which would be to look at your cash detail. And that's where you may find that you either drew or returned funds for the wrong year. So if you have a discrepancy in your cash summary, want to check and make sure your cash detail matches. If that matches, then you need to take the next step and go down to your loan detail information and resolve any issues that you see there. If they're not resolved, you need to go back and resolve them until they are fixed, and then once they are, you're done. And you just have to document. When you reconcile to the SAS, does that mean that you're at a zero balance every single month? No. It means you know where the money is, because just like your own bank statement, it's a point-in-time snapshot of where you're at. So you may have drawn or returned money since the SAS was taken. We generated the first weekend of the month to reflect the prior month data. So sometimes by the time you get it, you may have already had some activity. So what you currently have may not match up correctly exactly with the SAS, but bottom line, you need to know where that money is and account for it and make sure that you've reconciled. So if you have a discrepancy, just note what it might be. The SAS disbursement detail on demand you also request by going to batch, new report requests, and as I said, you can either get year to date, you can get a month to date, or you can get for a specific date time frame. If you get it in a fixed length format, you can import it into our report readers that we have available to you under the resources menu, and that takes that fixed length disbursement detail on demand. You import it into the reader and you blink twice and it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's really cool. Love it. The actual disbursement list you're going to get from your school's news box, and that's under the services menu, and then you click on the report link that you see down there at the very bottom. It's generated weekly if you have disbursement activity that previous week. So you'll see it, usually we generate it Saturday or Sunday, and you'll see it in your news box on Monday. A lot of schools will go ahead and report their disbursements, pull down their actual disbursement list, which will reflect all of the actual disbursements that were accepted, give it to the business office and say, here's who you need to draw funds for, if they're reimbursing themselves, or if you're reporting in advance, up to 7 days in advance, you still are, they're gonna be reflected on that weekly report. You're gonna give it to your business office. They say, yep, here's my accepted records. I'm gonna pull down the funds and post to the students that were accepted. School summary information is a screen that you'll want to look at frequently and see whether you're reconciled. You'll notice that this is a snapshot of a Pell 15-16. I made this screenshot just a few weeks ago, and you'll see that the school's cash greater than net accepted and posted disbursements is a negative $25,000. Are they reconciled? When was the reconciliation deadline for Pell 15-16? Right, so there you go. The school funding information screen, this is for Pell. Again, I have pointed this out in a couple of other slides, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but generally for Pell, you're gonna see the available balance being a positive and the cash greater than net accepted and posted disbursements being a negative for the same amount because, again, your disbursements drive your cash. You can also see your unduplicated recipients and also your ACA payment history. You can click on that link and view your history for that year. Nothing available yet for 16-17 because we haven't paid any ACA, but you can see all the payments that we have made for 15-16 out there right now. Notice at the bottom that school funding history report, that's a link that you can get to for any program and any award year to see all your cash detail. So even if you don't have access to G5, you can click on that school funding history report and see all the cash, the same cash you would see reflected in that external award history report on G5. Let's look at the same thing for direct loan. Here's an advanced funded school. They got an initial CFL of $11.5 million. Their current CFL is $115, almost $116 million. And you can see they have an available balance of how much? 166,000 and change, almost 167. How much does it look like they need to draw? 13.9. There you go. Okay, disbursements don't match the draws. Looks like they either need to draw funds, or maybe the business office drew what they needed to draw and the financial aid office needs to make some downward disbursement adjustments. Okay, again, the school funding history report, you can hit that little link, and then this is what it looks like. You've got the total as the bottom line, and then you can see this was an advance funded direct loan school, one of those grad schools I was probably talking about that had funding that they needed at the beginning of the year. So we gave them an authorization in March of $58,000. They drew down $33,000 in May. Then we increased their authorization in June, which they've been drawing from ever since. And you can also see the refunds of cash. So this is a report on COD from the funding information screen, hyperlink, but it looks just like the external award history report that your business office would use in G5. School funding information screen is great for direct loans and teach. It basically looks the same as the cash summary from your SAS, but this is available on a daily basis and will reflect daily updated what you've done at a summary level for what you drew or returned for direct loans, as well as what you have for accepted disbursements. And I made it just a little bit bigger there so you could see. Am I doing okay for time? What? 9:28? Okay. IFAP, also, you want to make sure that you're checking our announcements on a regular basis. A lot of you have problems with origination fee changes. So you'll submit actual disbursements. It will not be the right amount because maybe you sent it in before October 1st. You thought the student was going to get their disbursement, but they lollygagged about and didn't give you the verification documents until after October 1st. So you have to change the fees before you send it in because you didn't disperse until that. Every year we post an announcement, usually in June, reminding you of how to fix those records. So you could actually avoid having the rejected data as long as you're looking at IFAP and looking at the directions that we specifically put out there on how to fix your records. Okay, close out. If you are reconciling on a monthly basis, this is just one more month of finally coming to a zero balance. Remember how I said when you're doing monthly reconciliation, you don't always have to be at a zero ending cash balance. You just need to know where the money is. That is not true with end of year closeout. You must be at a zero ending cash balance for all in all systems. You can wait, but we recommend that when you finished making your final disbursement, that you go ahead and officially close out. We're going to have an official closeout process for Pell also starting next year. We do not currently have one for Pell, but we're going to make it more like direct loans. And like you have an official closeout for direct loans, we will also next year be starting an official closeout process for Pell. What I like to recommend for schools to do is to use the COD action queue. You'll find it under the batch menu. It's the second link on the left-hand side. And let's say you want to make sure that you've finalized everything for 15-16 as you get ready to close out officially for direct loans before the deadline. Put in the award year 15-16. Put your start date well before you started processing for the 15-16 award year, and then put it to today's current date. Keep your disbursement status at pending, and then hit, I'm sorry, getting confused with my COD hands-on presentation when I show you stuff about that. And then you'll get a list of all of your pending disbursements that either should be reported or should have been zeroed out. You can export that to Excel, put a filter on the top, get rid of all the zeros that are in there, and then you've got a list that can help you with reconciliation to see who you need to either report or who you need to zero out. A reminder of our closeout deadlines you can see there. Pell and Iraq-Afghanistan Service Grant is September 30th, as well as TEACH. Direct loans is the last weekday in July of the year following the award year. So for 15-16, you must be closed out by July 31st, 2017. must be. But we would encourage you to complete closeout for direct loans as soon as you're done processing. So if your latest award end date for the 15-16 year was September of 2016, you shouldn't wait until July 31st to close out. As soon as you know you're done processing and as soon as you have a 0 SAS, you can go in and officially close out. In order to meet the July 31st deadline, you do not want to wait until July 1st to close out because you need to have a 0 SAS in order to close out. So you need to have a 0 SAS in June in order to close out by July 31st. A lot of schools think they wait until the last minute to tie everything up, especially career colleges that have ongoing starts, and your latest award end date for 15-16 may be March of 2017. Could be. You still don't want to wait until the month of July to do your closeout because you've got to have a 0 SAS in order to officially close out. So aim for June at the very latest. Campus-based, you already had your deadline. It was September 30th. Make sure that what you're reporting matches what's in COD. We have a reduction that occurs in February following the filing deadline. So in February of 2017, we'll be reducing any 15-16 funds that were not drawn. Make sure that your balances match. Otherwise, you could have an unprocessed deobligation, which means you have a negative balance, which means you owe money to us for the campus-based program. And I believe we just sent out some letters to schools for a final demand letter for that. Interest will accumulate on the balance that you owe. If you need to still submit disbursements after an award year has closed, you can get extended processing. For Pell, you do not need extended processing if all you need to do is do downward adjustments to disbursements. You only need to request extended processing if you need to increase the amount that you reported. So if you need to increase a Pell 15-16 disbursement, you would need extended processing. If you were going to decrease a Pell 15-16 disbursement, you do not need extended processing. For loans, however, you must get extended processing for any changes once the award year has been closed. Any regulations that we have obviously supersede the closeout process. So again, if you're reporting timely, you're going to want to close out as soon as you finish processing for that award year. As I mentioned, you have to have a 0 ending cash balance, and make sure that you're monitoring IFAP because we send at least 3 times a year, we post announcements about the closeout process for each program. So there's lots of stuff there. So just to recap, you want to be in agreement. You've got that internal reconciliation where the business and financial aid office are agreeing on the amount and the date. You want to make sure that COD and the FSA reflect what you did on your campus. 15-day reporting requirement, and you must reconcile at least monthly in all programs. We've got some resources here. The FSA handbook, I've listed out our phone numbers and email addresses. Other sessions at the conference that are still available, and then I listed out all of our reports, which if you print this out you have, and we are ready for questions. So if you have a question, if you'll please go ahead and come to the microphone. If you don't have a question, thank you very much for attending, and thank you for allowing me to sit and be comfortable, just like you all got to do. Thanks a lot. Okay, I got a question over here at this microphone.
Yes, thank you. On returning funds, you talked about the direct loan 120-day rule.
Yes.
There's also the 14-day right to cancel, and I know we have to do the 14-day. The 120, after 14 days, we can do the return ourselves, or we can ask the student to work with their servicer. Is that correct?
Right. You're not. You can do that for the student, but you're not required to.
Okay.
So you can assist the student if they come within 120 days and say they don't want the money, but you're not required to do that.
Okay, that's what we're doing.
It's a benefit.
So.
It's a benefit for the student because then they don't have to pay funds or pay fees. So you're helping the student out because if you return it within 120 days, then there are no fees charged.
Okay, that's good to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this microphone?
Yes, I have a question having to do with drawdowns.
Yes?
Usually our business office doesn't draw down enough funds. Is there a minimum or a maximum that the COD allows on that?
I'm gonna, if you're leaving, can you go ahead and have a conversation outside so I can hear the questions? Thank you. Can you go ahead and repeat your question? You said this is a drawdown question.
Right.
And?
Our business office usually doesn't draw down enough funds.
Right.
And they're usually off by $80,000 to $90,000. Is there a minimum or a maximum that COD allows that I can go back and let them know?
There isn't a minimum or a maximum, so there isn't a rule about that. And a lot of schools do draw down a little less than they need so that they're not returning funds. But you really, I would encourage your business office to not make it that big of a spread. And we do require that before the end of the award year that you are drawing down everything that you needed. One of the things that I look at when I'm monitoring schools is if they always have a negative balance like that and basically the school is fronting the money, it can cover up adjustments that should have been made. So I usually look into that school's processes a little more closely. So what you could take back to your business office is say, we don't want Barbara looking at us. You need to make it just a little bit closer. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Question over here.
Hi, I have a comment on the question that was answered first.
Yes.
And then two questions. What we've been doing for students who've come back within 120 days and asked to return funds, usually if it's over 30 days, we have the student return it because a lot of our students have direct deposit. We've been told that if they go to the servicer and say it's a cancellation within 120 days, then it's almost like it didn't happen. And they don't incur the fees or the interest.
Generally, if the servicer gets it within 120 days of the disbursement date, that they treat it as though the school returned it.
Okay, right. Just wanted to put that out there. The two questions I had was about the recovery of unclaimed funds.
Let me generally, okay? There are many servicers, generally. Okay.
With the recovery of unclaimed funds, we usually have our checks stale date after 180 days, and then sometimes we'll contact the student and ask if they want it reissued, and sometimes they do. With the regulation, we have to return it if they don't cash it within 240 days. Is that off the original date of the first check or the reissued check?
It's off of the disbursement,
disbursement.
I believe.
Okay. Second question I had is related to the SAS. If we have student records that we send as an O2 or O3, like anything after the initial disbursement, when we bring the SAS report into our FAM system and then run reconciliation at the student level, we a lot of times will get mismatches if there was a correction either in dollar figure or date. Is there a way to fix that?
I am not understanding. One more time.
So if we have a student who we do an 002 record or an 003 record for a direct loan.
So you have multiple loans.
Well, no, it could be the same loan, but we've made a change. Like we reported the wrong disbursement date, or we made a change in the amount.
So the disbursement is a sequence number.
Right, sorry.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
When we bring the SAS back in every month, it's only showing the
final answer?
The first sequence,
Oh, the first sequence.
not any subsequent. So when we go and run the report on our FAM system showing any mismatches, it'll come up as a mismatch. Yet the date in COD and on the student account matches what we have as a disbursement date.
Can you take that down to the resource center and we'll log that as an issue?
Sure.
I don't think that's right.
Yeah, it happened
Right.
for us
Right.
since I've been doing it.
So down, 5 minutes, thank you. In the resource where you can also buy lunch,
Right.
next door, go to the COD table, which is at the very end on the right-hand side, past the Ask a Fed line.
Okay.
We need to look into that further.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Yes. I'm sorry? You'll what? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. You don't have to go down and log it. We've got it. Okay. Do you want to know the school, though? Can you, if you haven't left yet, where did you go? there's a lady over here in a red jacket. If you can just let her know your school information, then we can follow up a little bit more on that for you. Okay, I was here, so now I'm here. Okay.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was very nice.
Thank
we
you.
received a call from our business office, and they were asking, they had checks that students picked up for their balances for Pell or student loans, and the checks were not cashed. And they asked if we would cancel or reduce their funding so that they could send that money back.
Right.
So if the student doesn't cash it, are we supposed to be doing that?
Yes, that's the unclaimed funds, the
Okay.
stale dated check.
Okay. Now, do we have to go through and do a process with the students if they don't respond to the business office's request to cash their check?
If they don't respond to the business office request, then you need to do a downward adjustment and you need to return the funds. But the business office has already communicated with the student and reminded them that they need to claim their credit balance. And if they don't, they're unclaimed funds. And you need to follow the rules about the 240 days and what it has in regulations and the handbook.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
As far as the unclaimed, we have students who we send out a refund check because they had excess funds, and it's a small amount, a couple of dollars, $3 or $4. My business office is asking if there's a limit to the amount that we would have to. So if there's $3, we have to send back $3.
That school I told you about that was like 2005, I do not know, I can't remember how many they had, but they were like, it was that example exactly. It was like $1 or $2 for, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 students, which is $200 or $300 basically, but that was the scenario. It was $1 or $2 that was unclaimed, and they never returned it, and you have to do that.
Okay, my other question is along the same lines is, we don't issue checks for anything that's less than $1. So if a student, allow them to use their funds in the bookstore, if they end up with cents, do we still have to issue a refund check for that?
I'm gonna need you to go to Ask a Fed and ask them. I don't know.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I've gone blank.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you made the comment that, that you would monitor schools that didn't draw down 100% if it was a larger amount. I don't know who was up here earlier, because that would be a way to hide. Can you go in-
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
I mean, if a school dispersed $1 million and the business office only drew down 800,000, and they basically are going to use institutional funds to cover that 200,000, and this is the last question, so that'll be good. If they carry that the whole year because they just want to keep a cushion and you're using $200,000, I've seen some schools use $1 million or $2 million of their own institutional funds. It's hard for us then to see if you're making adjustments timely because you're not reconciled. Your cash never is meeting your disbursements. It's never enough. And so that we usually will start monitoring you a little closer and look at your disbursements and see if you're reporting your disbursement adjustments timely. So it's okay, there's nothing wrong with using institutional funds. It's just, whoops, you want to keep that, you want to definitely resolve it before the end of the award year, but I would expect to see that fluctuate a little bit.
Okay, so you're talking about adjustments on COD by
Yes.
the financial aid office.
Right.
And y'all monitor that on 15 days, so what would cause you to think,
It's going to cause me to look at it a little bit more closely.
okay,
And in my
I'll get my
experience,
business office to change it.
go ahead.
I can get my business office to change that policy, not a problem.
But I can also understand from a business office perspective that it's a pain in the neck to return funds. So I can understand not wanting to make sure that I did it myself. When I worked in an aid office, usually there were a couple of students that were not getting credit balance checks that I would not draw down funds for those until I knew everybody was there. I had a pretty fluctuating population. So on Friday, I might know that I needed to draw $200,000, and by the time Monday came around, two of the students had decided to go to Hawaii, go to jail, get in an accident, whatever, and I couldn't pay them. So if I had drawn all that money down, then I would have to return it. So once I confirmed that, yeah, everybody was there and it was good, I would immediately draw the money down, and then I'd be reconciled for the rest of that month. So it wasn't something I carried for a whole year.
Okay. And to toggle up on the business office, and I'm speaking to others, I obviously don't work in the business office, but talking to others at the conference, understand their business offices are reaching out to students that have checks that are unclaimed, like ours is 90 days. I know y'all allow 240. I hear that that's a best practice. Do most schools' business offices call after so long, or just after 90 days, they just stop? I mean, what's y'all's stance? If we make it earlier than 240 to ensure that we're in compliance?
That's your choice.
But-
You can no later than 240 days, but you can do it earlier.
But it would be the business office responsibility, not the financial aid, because we don't issue the checks.
It's just like who does R2T4 calculations. That's something that you work out internally.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry. Thanks so much for coming. Have a great rest of the day.